So, welcome everybody to this month's episode of Mortgages with Millennials. See if we can get our esteemed guest, Arun Mohan, in here. Looks like his microphone's on, his video's not. I don't know if his microphone's on. Anyways, we have much to discuss. Kristen, you are at MBA Annual. I unfortunately am not, or fortunately I'm not, depending on how you're looking at. How are you? I feel like we've been like ships in the night the last couple months.
I know. Yeah. Been doing good. I was just telling you before the show started, this has been so chaotic and amazing and overwhelming and how an MBA conference is. So it's been very fun to see a bunch of old friends like you see them all in one place, but also I get very overstimulated and so I like feel like a little bit of a crazy person.
Literally old friends. Everybody in the mortgage industry is getting so old these days. That's a nice Freudian slip to have there. Any any highlights from day one? But give people because I think the people attending the show aren't necessarily there right now. So give people a sense of what it's been like, what's
I
going on.
know, yeah. I mean, honestly, I wish I like registered everything, but I have not been into any sessions because I've had back-to-back meetings. Um, I've had some actually very relevant to our conversation today. I've had some really interesting conversations with some startups in the AI world, and so it's been fun to, yes, definitely. It's a pretty old white crowd over here, but I've seen some young blood in the mix. So, oh, and Arun is almost
So
here.
I
Oh, there you go.
promoted Arun.
Hi.
Here he is. We brought him out of the bullpen from the attendees to the panelist side of things. Arun, I'm going to send this other Arun that's a host out of here. So just three of us on the screen. How are you doing, man? Nice to meet you.
Likewise, yeah, I'm doing well. I've been ruminating about this topic for a while now, so I'm excited to talk about it with you all. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Arun Mohan in the mohair sweater. It's very
Oh,
stylish of
yeah,
him.
yeah. It's like
Yeah, it's very Denver actually, where
it's
I
kind
am right now.
it kind of has like a Yosemite motif
Ooh,
on it a little bit, but like a pixelated Yosemite.
oh, I love that.
So,
Yeah.
Kristen, before I let you introduce Arun here, I do want to say thank you very much to the Mortgage Collaborative for sponsoring today's show. If you're not part of their growing member network, which you could be an independent mortgage bank, you could be a bank, you could be a credit union, you could be a mortgage service provider. And if you're a mortgage service provider, I'm sure all you want to do is talk about AI, which we will do today. Check them out at mortgagecollaborative.com. Kristen, I was saying you introduced Arun and me, uh, and I know you're very excited about having him on the show. What can you give a little background on him, your relationship with him, why you were so excited about having him here?
Yeah, so I was introduced to Arun by a good friend, Aaron LaRue, who connected us. And I just from, the second we had a conversation, I think we talked for a long time and it was just a Zoom call. I just love the way his brain works and he has, really interesting thoughts on a lot of things. But today we're going to talk mostly about the AI conversation. And and I think one of the topics that came up recently, I just feel like AI has I mean, it's a huge shift in our whole world. And Arun has a lot of really great experience building some tools, leveraging AI at Credit Karma. So Arun is head of product at Credit Karma and has a lot of really great experience that I'll let him share a little bit in introducing himself. But yeah, super excited to have the conversation today.
Arun, I do want to ask about your experience with AI and machine learning, but even before we get to that, can you give the audience a little bit of your background and how you got to this point?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Nice to meet all of you. I'm going to start kind of where my journey at Credit Karma has been. I've been at Credit Karma for a long time, 9+ years. And throughout my time there, I've built essentially a bunch of new business lines for the company, whether it's auto loans, home loans, personal loans. But really, like 7 out of those 9 years has been building our home business from scratch. So building our mortgage marketplace, our lead gen experience, a bunch of educational tools and products for Credit Karma's 140 million plus members at this point by using their data to help them understand sort of where they stand in terms of their journey towards homeownership. Whole suite of products. More recently, I was sort of the GM of our home business as well, But really, I'm a consumer product person who thinks about how we can use technology to really level up the experience that is otherwise pretty shitty for consumers, right? That we're all trying to improve. But yeah, my career entirely has been doing product management within the fintech kind of world.
Very nice. And so
Yeah.
now, oh, go ahead, Kristen.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say now, what are you've been there a while, but now what are you working on most recently?
Yeah, so I currently lead product for all of our loans businesses, so which includes mortgages, home loans, auto loans, and personal loans. So more recently, there are various things happening across all of those product lines, but on the home side, we've been really focused on helping our homeowners access home equity and sort of reducing the friction and increasing transparency in terms of borrowing power, understanding what HELOC options make sense for you, and so on. That is more from a domain-specific product point of view, but really one of the things we've been spending a lot of time on is figuring out how can we combine all of the data that we have on consumers with Gen AI technology to really level up the product that we have. So that's what I'm excited to talk about.
So I was thinking, kicking off this conversation, I want to get to, where that's going, but I feel like I was just telling Robbie before we got on this call that I'm so excited about AI, and I use, I use ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever for everything, but I also have such limited knowledge. And I knew from talking to a couple of the AI startups earlier yesterday, I thought, man, I don't even know what you're saying. Like, I don't, everything you're saying is like going over my head. And I'm sure for many people on this call, they haven't even dug into the level that I'm nerding out on. And so I'd love to open it up by having a conversation around like, what does, in your opinion, what does AI mean? Just some high level stuff. Like, what does it mean for the mortgage business? And we can talk about kind of where it might go as a result. But what does it mean today for the mortgage business?
Yeah, I think AI is too broad of a term that gets sort of thrown around as a shiny toy, right? I think it's important to kind of dig in. When you think about it, AI has been around in the digital mortgage world for a while now, but more so in the context of like OCR and document parsing and try to automate a lot of that stuff. It's not really generative AI, it's just like using artificial intelligence to take the human out of the equation in some ways. There's also like machine learning, which is like all kinds of like lead scoring and trying to predict who is more likely to convert. Those are also aspects of AI that have also existed that we use at Credit Karma a lot. I think, generative AI becomes, which is like the hot new technology that we've been talking about off late. I think that gets really exciting because you start to build and train these sort of agents, as we call it, who can start to take on various roles and responsibilities that otherwise humans have had to take on in the past. And the beauty of this, like mortgage at the end of the day, is a commodity product. There's a bunch of hundreds and thousands of standardized rules that go into determining if you qualify for mortgage or not. But how borrower A resolves a certain issue from a DU finding versus borrower B resolves it is just very different. So it results in like a million edge cases. Which is probably what a lot of the audience on this call are trained to actually tackle as humans. Like, hey, for your situation, this is what you need to do. That if we can feed all of that intelligence into a large language model, which is what powers this technology called generative AI, that can start to do that work for you. So that prior to this technology was really impossible without humans, because that we're talking about a million permutations of scenarios. But generative AI can teach itself and train itself to actually deliver that guidance. So that's the aspect of technology with this that I'm really excited about for mortgage. Because no one wants to be doing that. We all want to be closing loans as a business, right? So if technology can take that off of your plate, why not?
Yeah, and I want to ask you, Robbie, about your experience with AI as well, and kind of where you're coming from on this. But first, I want to ask, a question that I think a lot of people have, and you kind of brought up here. AI is able to replace a lot of, things that loan officers do today. What are your thoughts on AI replacing loan officers completely?
Favorite question. Short answer is no. I think especially with home and mortgages, it is such a personal, emotional decision, and trust is a big, big factor as to how consumers decide who to move forward with and what loan to go with. So I like to think of it as an amazing technology that can help make your lives better and augment the work you do and help you focus on the things that increases throughput, increases efficiency, increases the number of loans you can originate. That's how so I think I would encourage the audience to think about this as kind of a hierarchy of the stuff that you can throw into a digital mortgage application and people can DIY and fill it out themselves. Great. And then there's probably a bunch of questions that generative AI can just answer without you having to, pick up your phone or talk to any of them. But there's that final layer, which is establishing that human connection and just being available. That's never going to go away with AI. So
yeah, it just frees people up to spend more time on that. So I think that, yeah, it's just so exciting. Robbie, what's been your experience with AI, and what are your thoughts on that?
My experience is that it's certainly an amazing production tool. And the more that I've learned about it, the more I've come to understand the better ways that you can feed it and the better ways you can prompt it, the more you'll be able to get out of it. Now, as it relates to the mortgage industry, my experience has been, I do 5 interviews a week for my daily podcast or audio podcast. It seems multiple a week are on AI, and all these companies are touting, we have AI, we have AI, we have machine learning, it's the latest and greatest. And I know you're experiencing that in Denver, Kristen, where you go to all these booths of vendors, or I guess they want to call themselves tech partners these days, but vendor booths, and they say, we have AI, we have it. And it seems like you're just inundated with it in the industry. And so, yes, I've answered your question, but I'm gonna almost flip it onto Arun, because my opinion is there's this disconnect between hype and reality. Everybody's touting, we have AI, we have AI, it's doing this, it's doing all these things, or it can do these things. And I don't know if reality's there. And I've had people compare it to blockchain, which I actually don't think is a great apples to apples comparison. I think a better example would be, Kristen, you and I got in the industry around a similar time in the early 2010s. And there was all this talk about the digitization of mortgage, this end-to-end digital process. I remember this from the early 2010s. And we're still working on that 10 years later. And so AI to me is similar in this, like, yeah, sure, it's here. And maybe in some scenarios it exists in the capacity that people tout it to exist. But for the large part, I think it's going to take a long time where it reaches its full potential. Arun, I blathered on there. You have thoughts on any of that? I saw you nodding at
I
various
have
points.
so many thoughts. Like,
Yeah, please.
let me see. I think first of all, I think it's just a shiny toy. This sort of like phase will pass. The technology is amazing, but then there's a lot of foundational infrastructure pieces with this technology that we haven't even thought through, including things like AI safety and compliance and regulation and so on and so forth. So I think the buzz will die, and then we'll build the foundations correctly. And then I think we'll really start to reap dividends across the industry. That might be sort of a 5 to 10 year journey we would likely go on. So I'll give you a great example. So these days, when most people think about Gen AI, it's like ChatGPT, or it's like a chat interface. That's what they think about. You can ask it anything and it'll do whatever for you, right? But the reality is, like at Credit Karma, we've been testing with our version of our Gen AI experience called Intuit Assist, ask me anything type chatbot. What we're seeing is, especially in the context of finances, people don't know what to ask, right? Imagine a first-time home buyer who doesn't even know where to start. Like, they don't know what to ask. So that's not really a helpful experience. So we had to learn from that because of the low engagement and turn it around to, hey, for this customer, what are likely the questions they're going to have them as sort of preempted questions on the screen, and then they can click into that and like start to engage like that. So we need to like meet the borrower and the customer where they are. So right now, I would say to the audience, don't bite the bullet and like, I got to throw a chatbot on my digital flow and it's going to fix my problems. It isn't. I think that is like probably 1% of what the technology can do.
And that actually could make it worse. We've seen here recently with some comments from the CFPB that if you introduce a chatbot, you're liable for the responses of the chatbot. So you're
Right.
throwing AI at a problem doesn't necessarily mean it's a solution. So, and I actually said say Nikki did a good job in the chat of bringing this back to why we're doing this show. She said, how does AI help with millennials mortgages? And there's a lot of different ways we could tackle this. Are you offering a more seamless technological experience? Is it providing the customer with what they're actually looking for? Kristen, when you see that question, where does your head go specifically? Because I think generally it's like, yeah, we want a more seamless process. Yes, we want more AI to help us with these things and be more productive on the business side of things. There's a lot of different ways you go.
Yeah, I get overwhelmed, and I'm sure Arun could speak to this a whole lot, more simply. I just think about, I mean, some of the things he's already talked about in terms of increasing productivity and taking care of some of the tasks that are humans are doing now. That's going to impact the way that millennials are able to collect advice from a human being. I do think we want to talk to someone, but we also want to be able to do our research ahead of time. And I think having things like Intuit Assist and things that are allowing the home buyer to ask questions, like we even noticed with First Home IQ, this is not AI. We have just a quiz that people take, and it measures their understanding of buying their first home, and they get the questions right or wrong at the end. But it allows them to have some language to be able to have a conversation about buying a home, because they are so they're so skeptical, they lack the knowledge and the confidence to be able to start the conversation. So having things like that, I think, could really be transformative around the home buying process. And then there's a whole lot of other, directions I think that we could take this, especially when you start thinking about generative AI and that direction. But yeah, that's kind of where my mind goes. Oh, and then Nikki's comment earlier about like, I mean, this is going to chat GPT or chat models, but you can be able to use it for creative thinking, marketing, coming up with fresh language, as Nikki said. I think that's really helpful and can really change how we maybe relate to home buyers today and be able to communicate things a lot more clearly without, always like even, I don't know, talking about some technical language that we don't need to be using whenever we're communicating with millennials. So.
Maybe that's a good segue to what Arun's doing at Credit Karma with Intuit Assist. I was actually blown away, Arun, that around half of the US millennials are Credit Karma members. It's an amazing statistic to me, but maybe you could fill in the audience a little more about what you've been building over there in Intuit Assist, particularly how it will be applied to home products. And I guess to answer Nikki's question, and since we're all here, our raison d'etre, why it has an emphasis on first-time home buyers.
For sure, yeah. We started the Intuit Assist journey at Credit Karma probably like 18 months ago or so. It's actually a AI platform across Intuit and Credit Karma, since now we're sort of a merged entity. What we started building was a sort of ask me anything chatbot. And as I said, that didn't really work out. And then we shifted our strategy to what we call AI assisted moments, which is essentially like really looking at your financial profile, your credit profile, which we can fully see. We have additional profile data about your debt, your income, and so on, and actually really pull out insights that only AI can do at scale. So for example, if a member is carrying a credit card balance, we call our users members because they're authenticated users, but our members, they're carrying a credit card balance, they might find an insight that calls out, hey, how much their balance increased by, what impact that can have on their credit card utilization, and coupled with what is one tip to reduce my debt. So we're building this sort of upfront insight that gives you some knowledge, makes you feel informed, and then gives you a prompt to further engage with the chat. So we're sprinkling these AI-assisted moments throughout the Credit Karma experience, and including within our home buying power experience, for example, like how much home can I afford? Can you sort of break this down for me based on my financial profile? We've kind of started with the version 1, but that's the type of thing where the real magic happens, and that's what I'm excited to build more on. The other aspect, I'll say last thing, is like what we call intelligent shopping. So Credit Karma has had various marketplaces where we have, like, let's take mortgage, for example. We work with like 20 plus mortgage lenders on our marketplace, but you go in and you see a bunch of offers. You have to sort of understand all of the loan terms, fees, understand basic education about how do I decide. But imagine if you just had a prompt that says, see why this offer is shown to me, or like help me decide between the top 3 offers. We can then take your profile, the offers, and then combine all of that to deliver a very personalized page that actually explains it just for you why offer X is better for you or product X is better for you. So that's kind of the roadmap on that we're building on.
So, and it doesn't only apply to purchase business. There's also refinance or home equity components, correct?
That's right. We actually have a product that we internally call Home Pulse, but it's basically a home equity tracking offering. So you come to Credit Karma, you verify a home address, we pull some AVMs, we already know your mortgage from your credit report, and we can estimate what your equity is and how much you could borrow against that equity by retaining, what you need to retain in terms of post-borrowing equity. Like we do all of that math and we just show you sort of a static number today, which is helpful. 10 million plus people actually use that on a monthly basis, which is awesome. But what can I do with it? Like, how can I put my home equity to work? Can I actually take some home equity and consolidate my credit card debt and actually, or should I do it, take it out for a home improvement loan and add it back to my home to increase the value? These are all top use cases that generative AI can like surface proactively and then give you that guidance on how you should use that borrowing power for. So that's the last mile that I think we're tackling with Gen AI. We've built kind of the foundation of the data, but now it's the actionable plan that Gen AI can deliver.
That's really exciting to me because I mean, I know for me, there's a record amount of home equity in America, and people don't know what to do with that. And I know for me, I don't really want to talk to someone until I've run some scenarios myself, or I don't even know that I could have that, opportunity. But to be able to play around with here's like this personalized advice, I think that is a huge, a huge thing that you guys have developed, but also something that I think we'll hopefully see a lot more of in the future that feels collaborative with the consumer.
I think that piece, the personalized, is the word. I think the real power of generative AI gets unlocked when you can combine whatever the internet has taught the model with actual data that lives about the consumer that lives in your world. You need to be able to combine both of them. Otherwise, it's just as good as going to ChatGPT or Google, right? The real power comes from combining that. So that's what we're really trying to focus on. Ultimately, as technology evolves, that's what I think you all should be thinking about. Like, is your data well organized? So when you can license a generative AI tool to actually work with your data, is it like structured in a way where you can extract the most value? So that's the type of foundational stuff you can start thinking about now. So that way when the technology is where it needs to be, you'll be ready.
So I don't mean to put you on the spot too much, but with all this activity from the younger generation or data you've been collecting, have you noticed trends amongst millennials when it comes to what they're looking for with buying a home or their refinance or home equity? Or are there any noticeable data points that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely, uptick in refi in the last 3 months is definitely a trend that we're seeing. HELOC originations, at least amongst the Credit Karma member base over the last 18 to 24 months, seems stable. We've been talking to our HELOC partners and they've been saying even just the media buzz, the news about, oh, rates are dropping has shifted mindshare from everyone towards refi, but it has not objectively increased HELOC rates or anything. Like the opportunity is still there. So we are not seeing any meaningful shift in originations outside of refi in our trends. So
Interesting.
yeah.
So there,
Oh, go ahead. No, keep going. If you're on that same thread, I was going to shift.
No, I was going to pass to you and just say you're on mute.
Oh, so I want to make sure all of this is really practical to our audience, and this is, I think, shows us a window into what the future. I mean, what today looks like, but also where the future is going, where the puck is headed, wherever. And I want to give a chance for people to ask questions around, AI and what this means for them, but to kind of open it up. And I know we have a question from Lee we can come back to. But I would like us to, I don't know, for you to share your thoughts on what some of the audience members, being primarily loan officers, what they could do today to help themselves ride the wave of AI, and I know this is going to change a lot, but given where we are today, do you have any suggestions on how they can leverage AI today?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, I was also doing some research on all the different players in the space. I think for loan officers, brokers, etc., I think, using either ChatGPT or like products like Sidekick. I don't know if you've heard of it, but essentially it helps you create a bunch of personalized, customized marketing collateral and customized sort of crafting you emails and like how to do customer outreach in a very automated fashion. So that's definitely one practical use case I think someone already brought up, and there are companies doing, so you should check out Sidekick if you haven't. So that one's helpful. I think in terms of actual consumer experiences, there are various mortgage originators that I've noticed are putting like ChatGPT sort of chatbots on there. I mean, I kind of threw some shade on it earlier, saying like, hey, that's not it, that technology is much bigger than that. But for the people who actually engage with those chatbots, at Credit Karma, for example, we have seen an increase in engagement and increase. It's just like not enough people are engaging with it, but the ones they do are actually having a much higher pull through in terms of overall down funnel conversions and whatnot. So I would say explore if there are lightweight ways in which you can implement a chatbot for consumers in your digital flow or digital product. It's worth testing. At the very least, what you'll know is like, you'll know what questions people are asking. That can then help you further optimize your workflows and like standardize some of your processes around those top questions asked. So it can't use it as like a survey tool at the very least, right? It's still helpful, and it helps build trust that there's someone on demand I can talk to.
And there is a free resource from Addy AI. That was one of the AI companies I looked at, and I have not explored it yet, but it sounded really interesting, and it's for loan officers. So I would encourage everybody to check that out. I think it's something, for the industry that is similar to using ChatGPT, or I use Perplexity a lot for doing research. You can use a focus feature that will search Reddit for consumer sentiment or things like that. So anyway, there's just some, a lot of tools out there that I would encourage people to explore.
One other thing I would add is I think AI technology, when it comes to automated chat support and sort of reducing back and forth time and automating a lot of that communication, is actually way more advanced than some of the more generative stuff. So there's companies like Capacity that focuses quite a bit on reducing the back and forth and automating a lot of that comms based on whatever conditions and open items are there in your LOS. So you don't have to do a lot of the phone calls and the texting manually. So that's something worth looking into. So Capacity is one of them.
Okay, that's awesome. I'll grab those links too. So we had a question from Nikki that was talking about building trust, and I think trust is a really interesting topic when it comes to AI, especially. I mean, but I think her question was really focused on how do we explain the difference in the Credit Karma hard pull for and the hard pull for the mortgage application. They feel a sense of distrust when their scores are often lower or very different. And I think, this all of it is going to come down to education and helping people understand the differences. But Arun, do you have any thoughts on that, or even just the general topic around trust and AI?
If I understood the question correctly, it was a little bit more around what the score Credit Karma shows. It's soft pull kind of Vantage score, but then ultimately that's not what mortgage applications consider a tri-bureau FICO. Like, how do we handle?
I think that's where Nikki's going. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like we recognize as we go deeper into the mortgage space as a company, we need to address that gap. So we are working on bringing in more FICO models that actually represent mortgage underwriting in-house. So the advice that we give early on to consumers actually does line up with what they would get if they go downstream. So that's a long kind of process. But otherwise, it's a matter of using, I mean, the explanations and comparisons between a Vantage model and a FICO model is out there in the internet with a bunch of articles and content. So these Gen AI models like ChatGPT and whatnot are trained on that. So and that's what we have built our kind of model Intuit Assist on top of. So ultimately being able to explain all of that if someone has a question becomes a lot easier. And we can do that proactively and build trust and be transparent without having to like anticipate someone actually not having someone might having a bad experience. We can just be upfront and transparent, and Gen AI can do that automatically. But yeah, but fair call out that it is a challenge today that we have to explain it to the borrower, like, hey, this is FICO, this is Vantage, and so on.
Yeah, I think there's lots of things that need explanation too. So, so I think that's just kind of part of that process. Robbie, did you want to dig into some other questions
I got questions for days, Kristen. And I want to close on this before we kind of segue to some other things. There's a lot of people out there that, like I had insinuated, are inundated with AI, ride the way, get on, do AI. What are some like practical steps people can take today to work it into their schedule? And Kristen put some great links on there, but where are some ways that you can see people that are kind of like, I don't know, the first thing about AI, where do you get started making yourself more productive?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say, like, I wouldn't feel like the fear of missing out or like ride the wave. Like, I think the wave is just sort of starting. It's easy to feel that way in the current environment. You haven't missed anything. It's yet to come. So, but in the meantime, I think the best way to actually familiarize yourself with AI is to actually start using tools like ChatGPT and Perplexity. This is what I've told my internal team too. People are coming up with cool new ideas and whatnot and saying, yeah, we can use AI to solve this problem. But like, have you used it yourself? Have you tried prompting it, saying, hey, I am a consumer with XYZ, can you help me? And see what type of responses it gives you. That there's no better way for you to actually learn how to use AI tools by just getting hands-on with it. So you'd be surprised I think you should try, I'd say two things. One, just for productivity stuff that Kristen shared, sort of helping generate an initial email so you don't have this sort of, I don't know where to start type problem. It can give you a great template and you can tweak it. That's awesome. But also in terms of how you want to actually tackle a specific borrower situation and their loan application situation. Of course, you're the expert with years of training, but these models have also been trained on publicly available data on like how to handle borrower scenarios. You can just ask ChatGPT or Perplexity, I'm working with the borrower with XYZ, DU finding or a condition, or, they have a gap in their, employment history, whatever it is. Like, how should I approach this for the most optimum closing time? It'll probably give you some helpful, smart examples and actionable things you can do. So just get in there, start asking it as though you're talking to a human and see what happens.
And that's a really good point, because people never realize necessarily what it can do. I think people, allow yourself to be a little amazed with like, holy smokes, there is a lot of humanity to this answer that it gave me for this specific borrower. And like I said earlier, the best way to get a good answer is to feed it better information.
Right.
If you type, something standard, it's going to give you something standard. If you get very nuanced, it's going to give you something very nuanced. There's interplay back and forth. That's
so in a future state, you got tools like ChatGPT, and then you got all of your borrower data. You should be able to like integrate them and to deliver personalized, proactive advice. But that's the future. But in the meantime, what borrower you're working with, their application details, their 1003. You can sort of simulate those scenarios and say, this is my borrower's profile, kind of list it out, and then here's what I need help with, and it'll be able to help you. One thing I will say is, and this is one of where the technology needs to evolve, is generative AI as a technology is not really good at math. So that is a big aspect of what needs to improve with the technology before we can do a lot of these cool things. And we're saying the outputs aren't like deterministic, but that really means like an output for the same prompt to ChatGPT today versus tomorrow could be different, right? So that can't be the case with math, right? It has to be the same one. So these large language models, the way they are structured, don't necessarily do that. So the industry is trying to solve for that. because we're talking numbers here. So that's something to keep in
I tried using ChatGPT and plugins and all these things to use do data analysis for me on my last research report. And for a while, it took me down this whole path. I was like, whoa, look at these crazy insights. And like, this is statistically significant. I'm so surprised, whatever. And then I realized it was just it was totally all lies. It's not,
Yeah,
not accurate information. And it was, and then I realized, like, are you even reading the spreadsheet I sent? And at one point it was like, I don't know what it didn't read it, and it was just feeding
yeah,
different information, but also some of the math was wrong as well. So I realized, okay, not there yet for data
yeah,
analysis, at least from me.
exactly. It's definitely not. My favorite quote is, I think some researcher said this, like, these models are like stochastic parrots. Like they generate language that sounds convincing to a human, but they don't really understand the meaning of the language that they're parroting.
Oh,
So that's like, you need to really, the technology needs to improve for that to
I
happen.
think what's exciting though is that it will improve. It's constantly learning, it's constantly gathering data and making itself better. And each iteration of AI is a quantum leap
Right.
forward. It really is. And so I'm certainly excited about the capabilities. And it's probably a good time to bring in Lee's question that was put in the chat earlier. And that's kind of the end goal here. What's the end goal for using AI in the mortgage business? There's a couple thousand people that are in Denver right now. Is the end goal that there only needs to be 40 or 50 people in Denver? Is it that the cost of origination plummets down? Like where do you see as being what do you see as being the end goal, Arun? And I should add the caveat that it changes based on department. And Lee's coming from a capital markets, secondary marketing, lock desk perspective. It's starting to be incorporated in the hedging system. An end goal in the capital on the capital market side with granularity or transparency might be different than the end goal for a processor or for the head of compliance. But what do you see as some end goals for mortgage with it?
Yeah, I mean, my mental model is there are various roles in that entire origination of a mortgage that people play. That, let's say you are an originator, you have a buddy who is next to you who can do like majority of the work for you, and you can actually close and like do more calls and more outreach and actually source more leads. If you're call it, I mean, there might be tasks that like take the processing and like the back and forth with your investor or your wholesale lender or whatnot, like that is really tactical, right? For a specific loan file, these are the things we need. And it's all of the process and the communication that takes up so much time. I hope that the end goal there is like a lot of that back and forth can be automated, like eliminating the need to have people just to do that for you, right? So things like I'm looking at like 3 different loan terms and loan options, like help me decide. This is where like the hierarchy comes in again. Like you can use technology to show all the loan options. AI can help actually educate the customer and make them feel smart. So by the time they get on the phone with you to close the deal, you don't need to educate them about like one-on-ones. You can just tell them this is the loan you want. Here's what to expect in terms of next steps. So it's really an efficiency play. Ultimately, metrics wise, yeah, more efficiency, more throughput, more loans closed, and above all, the consumer feels more like smarter, educated, and more trustworthy as they go through the process. Like that's the end game. They feel like they are in control, which they don't currently.
And we also have one more question. Christian, I'm going to defer to you, and maybe this will be awkward here, but there's one from Mike uh, in the chat, and it was talking about how companies see Credit Karma as a competitor, luring in potential. You think that's okay for us to?
Yeah. So I just started typing a response. So the question was around, seeing like, well, I don't know where it is now. I can't see it, but Credit Karma as a competitor, bringing in, potential clients, providing scores that are not always accurate, and then selling them to out-of-town lenders. So I think, one thing that this would emphasize is the important, and as AI shows us, is the importance of you leveraging whatever you are, like your localization, your local expertise, your relationships. Like the more that we use AI and the more we see competitors like this kind of emerge, or any national D2C lender, anything like that, like the rockets or whatever too, it shows this, like, you have to dig in deep into those relationships, the relationships in your community, and and expand those. And so that's my take on it. Would be curious if either of you have any additional thoughts on that. But I think it, especially as we continue to improve your own productivity and all of that, then you can expand those relationships. But we are going to need to spend more time digging into your community and your relationships.
Arun, I don't have much to say. I'm one of the bottom half of millennials that isn't a CK member, unfortunately. Maybe I'll sign up. But yeah, I'm not financially literate. This has been my
Perfect. I know. So we've got 1 and 1 here. Half.
show has been my entire financial literacy in my life. It's taught me everything that I've learned so far. But Arun, in terms of taking some people and selling them to out of town, I mean, do you view lenders as competitors? And maybe you froze here. You're kind of a cheeky smile there. Do you see that? Is he frozen on your screen or is it just mine?
Yeah, it's a perfect smile for the question.
Well, we'll see if he comes back here. But I think the way that I would structure that question to Arun, if you're out there and you can hear me, is does Credit Karma view themselves as a competitor to mortgage originators? Arun, hologram of Arun, thoughts? Well, that's it for today's. No.
I was dropped off just in time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like yeah, there you go. He's gone. Mike, you asked
Robbie,
two.
I do think this is a really good question around, like, people on the call, I think, are often feeling competitors, whatever they are, and AI could also be seen as a competitor, but it can also be a tool and also show this need to build
Arun,
that network.
Arun,
There you
well,
are.
I don't know if his audio is kicked. Yeah, is Arun. All right. So Arun, basically
Sorry, had some
don't
technical.
worry, don't worry. The boiled down question is, does CK see themselves as a competitor to mortgage originators? Hey, we can get some of these qualified leads and do what we want with it. Like, where do you view yourself in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so the way we've built the brand that we have is by leaning into sort of this unbiased third-party middle person kind of aspect. So all of our offerings are either our marketplaces. So we work with various lenders and originators and connect the most likely to convert, highly qualified, pre-screened customer to those lenders. And we want to operate as much as possible in that middle space, right? Because that's the brand and the trust that we've built. And we say we have our data, we have our users, but trust is the number one asset that we have. And we have gained that by being in that zone. So yeah, so from a business point of view, not necessarily, but from a consumer experience point of view, our goal is to, over time, bring more and more of that application experience and all of that onto Credit Karma's side. We can augment that with generative AI tips and education and things like that. That's very personalized because we know so much about the borrower. So that way, by the time the lender, so say you all are ready to receive a lead from Credit Karma, it's essentially pre-screened. We have checked for approval viability. They're more educated. So that way it'll be much easier and faster to close. So that's kind of how we view the world.
That's great.
Kristen, this is it for today's show. I feel like we could talk to Arun for a long time. I will say to the audience before we go, let us know if you want more discussions about AI. Are you tired about talking? Are you tired of talking about it? Would you like more angles of it? The feedback is great for us in determining future guests that can provide the most value to you. So please reach out. I think Kristen at firsthomeIQ.com or info@crispandcommentary.com. Let us know. Sometimes it feels like we're producing this stuff in an echo chamber and you just kind of eat it up and are like, all right, let us know what you want. Yeah, we're here to provide value to you. Arun, I certainly think you provided value. It seems like all these discussions I have with AI, I come away with a little couple valuable tidbits, and maybe it's now that AI is a sarcastic parrot. But there's things that I pick up from all these conversations that are really helpful. So I want to thank you very, very much for joining us. This was fantastic.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me.
And
thank you so much.
Big thank you as well to the Mortgage Collaborative for sponsoring today's show. As I said at the start, check them out, mortgagecollaborative.com. Certainly can help with discussions around AI or anything else that comes with being a member partner there. So thank you, everybody. We will see you when we have a new president next month. Holy smokes, Kristen. Woo!
What?
We're gonna have a new president by the time.
Oh, gosh. I was thinking president of what? Oh, and our country. Oh, yeah. Wow. I'm sweating already thinking about it. Okay.
See everybody at the end of November. Take care. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Arun. Thanks, Robbie. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.